I will forget.
That's the only way I like it.
Alrighty,
Morning,
meeting
all.
will to order. Oh, morning.
My eggs.
Yeah. Thanks for everybody.
Going for Cross.
Wow.
Give me my $5.
I'm gonna have to get back to you on that.
Oh, wow. Interest.
Anyone else got $5? My personal egg man.
All right, first item, consideration of the November 2nd minutes. We had a chance to review those.
Move approval? Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes pass. Next item is review of the Q3 financials.
And finance
Mark is
director.
here.
Yep, finance director Mark is here. Anyone has any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I prepared this report, it's pretty standard fare for what we've been doing for the CDA.
Mhm.
The only thing that caught my eye, really, is, looks like the CDA engaged Ellers a bit more than typical on the preparation of the CDA annual report, and that's gonna result in some higher than anticipated fees.
And I'm sorry, which line do we see that?
That's professional fees financial,
Four down from expenditures.
the projected line item.
I think it's a question I have for your bids. You know, we had engaged them, they were here, provided more information to the group, but do you need that level for the annual report for your, that level of service? Just a question we should come back to.
Say that again?
Do we need that level of service or this level of report? I'm not sure.
Well, what is this number based on? Is this based on our bills that we were,
Mhm.
yeah, so this is,
So
we've already
2018.
engaged this
Mhm.
much?
Correct.
The projected is what we've spent.
Yes.
What's gonna be for 28, yeah?
What was unusual about this? I mean, like, you've worked with these guys for a long time.
Just
What
a lot
was
of cross
unusual?
engagement, cross discussion.
Yeah.
Well, we sent them back to revise.
Yes, and they were
at
here
least
twice.
once.
Yeah.
Okay.
If
Just
not
a couple
twice.
grand a pop every
Yeah.
time you do that, so.
Yeah.
To your question, I would say, no, I would not expect
Mhm.
annually that it should be. Again, I think we're moving into, assuming no new kids, we're moving into very much of a status quo
Right.
state, so, and then I think we have the question, you know, do we present to the board, is it just findings that are communicated to the board?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I would think this number should come down.
Okay.
Maybe we need to do more work on the front end to make sure everybody's, the CDA and the board are in alignment with what needs to be contained in
Mhm.
there. I think this year, I think we captured a lot of that, so if,
It sounded like we made some changes to how it had been done.
Yes.
For many years.
Right.
To make it simpler
Yeah.
and maybe even
well,
smaller.
we made it simpler last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, time flies.
Okay.
Significantly. This year the changes were a little bit in, I would say, in tone and in, you know, not so much quantitative, but qualitative.
Mhm.
But
You
again,
don't need a fiscal consultant to do that.
Right,
Nope.
yeah. So I think, again, I would expect this number to come down,
Okay.
but it may make sense for us to make sure we are all on the same page and on the same page with the village board before we engage Ellers next year with what we're expecting.
So following the financial summary, which at the bottom of that, below the line, again, it shows the CDA, the balances they have for their 3 buckets of funding, facade program, loan program, and other CDA activities. Those are 3 different restricted balances. A sub-breakdown of the loans on that front page, what's outstanding and what's available. There's just not been a lot of new activity, so that's pretty consistent. The second page then shows a little more detail of what's been going on. there's a couple potential facade grants out there that, haven't made disbursement yet, so,
Do we know why Stone Creek Coffee is taking so long?
We actually received it last night, I believe. I haven't had a chance to open it, if that was Erica. I think we received the final reimbursement last night. So, was that correct, Mark? Did you see that at all or not?
I don't see any of this.
Erica,
Until you give it to me.
Erica emailed it to a group yesterday afternoon. So that should be finalized shortly.
They put those out to benches?
Yeah, in the lighting and.
And then, I just, again, since there's relatively limited activity, I printed the entire year's detail, put process behind the numbers and the
It's actually helpful.
funny looking spreadsheet there. That is through, the date of the printing of the report.
Mark, I have probably a really silly question, but the balances, is this cash that we have that is sitting someplace, and is it?
Yes, it is.
So is there interest being earned?
No, there is.
'Cause it's,
Part of the transfer language is that these would be sitting in the general fund. I forget what it was, but basically it was, the village doesn't want to engage in investment activities for the CDA. So if the CDA wants to redirect funds to other banking institutions to earn interest, you could certainly take those actions.
I mean, you can maintain liquidity for those funds and put 80% of them in some type of low level, I mean, you can serve interest.
I can do that, I don't want to do that.
Okay,
so the general
2% interest earning checking.
okay.
I don't wanna intermingle CDA investing with village investing, and that's
Okay.
really the
Oh,
crux from my
Okay.
perspective,
okay.
so. we
Even
can-
though it's kind of in the general fund?
Yeah, it already is intermingled.
Yeah, isn't it already intermingled? I mean, if you're investing,
If
are
it,
you investing in
again,
the
I would
general?
have to refer back to the language, but we
Well, let's look at,
we framed it so that, it was not a part of the invested funds of the village,
Okay.
basically.
well, let's
So-
look at.
And again, given the fact that we're not seeing a whirlwind of activity, maybe
Yeah.
seems that the CDA might wanna request the
does it
village
sit?
to move funds into a series of CDs at North Shore Bank or something like that, just to get some earnings, we'll ladder those out and.
Even just a 2% checking account.
Yeah, you
Right.
get 12,
So,
you
yeah.
get 12, 14 grand a year.
So, yeah, because where does it,
Where does it sit?
yeah, where does it? Well, again,
Yeah,
let's take
it's
this,
in the village's general checking account.
so there is interest being earned,
No, that account does not earn interest,
no interest on that, okay.
not with the level of activity that we do here at the village.
Okay, well, we'll put that as an action item to look into.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Can I just ask one other question? So with the village invest in we just adopted last year, short-term investments, and we're doing really well, correct? The village? Like when we have cash on hand?
Well, I mean, compared to when interest rates started with a .00,
We're moving in the right
we're
direction.
moving in the right direction. But, yeah, I mean, there are opportunities, the issue is that CDA is not the village, and I really don't wanna try to parse out CDA investment activities and village activities. So when we did the transfer, it was stated that those funds would be maintained in general operational funds available to the CDA and not part of the investments of the village. But it's an easy fix, we can move money outside of the village funds and for the
It seems
CDA.
like, yeah, I mean, like from a you gotta take a look at the structure, but it almost seems like a no-brainer.
Yes.
You know?
Agreed.
Yep. That actually seems like we're not doing our job.
Should have been done.
We're not investing that money.
Different
for
type of
interest,
interest.
Say that to the camera, all right?
Well, hey, you know, truth
Why
is
is it
truth,
pointed at,
facts are
let's point it at
facts.
Kraus?
Hey, I'll take all the blame.
We turn it with
Okay.
If you need receipts, we turn it with a remote.
Oh, right, right, I am in the middle, right.
All right, so, any other questions on again, there were no action item, this is just to
Yeah, what
keep us
you, going
apprised.
through this activity, I would imagine you'll see is perhaps some action, dispersing those facade
Yes.
programs.
Yep.
I'm not aware of any other loans, applications, right? Part, business loan applications at this
No.
point.
No, correct.
So, Kensington Liquor, I think you've already discussed that sufficiently.
And can I, just to remind me, the current balance on that is,
Well, the current balance
I
is,
just want-
is the beginning balance, because he hasn't made any
it is the
payments.
beginning balance? Okay. Well, he's made payments
He
for
has
in
made
2018.
some.
Not in 2018.
Yeah, he did.
That's not long.
Okay,
Yeah, you
Yeah, I
collected
made a
Yeah.
bunch of them.
They made, he paid for.
did he get a couple months into 18?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying, yeah, it could have been, yeah.
It could have been
17's made in
2017.
Yeah, he was
2018,
catching,
yes.
yeah.
But I can send you the receipt that they provided me.
Okay,
But since that time, there have been no further payments.
correct. Okay,
I'll send you that, Mark, so we can double check it.
Sounds
any other
great.
questions for Mark? Excellent, thank you for this, Mark.
You betcha.
Thank you.
All right, next item is consideration of scope work of the transportation parking analysis. So we have the updated, everybody has the edited document. All right, so there is an item in the packet, sort of a summary, this is from you to us.
Yeah, so that was the memo to the board.
Okay.
And then the original draft RFP that was discussed at the committee of the whole on Monday night. Based on comments I received, prior to that meeting and at the meeting, we promised to revise it for your discussion this morning, so you know the current status of it. So I redlined things that were removed and, highlighted things that were added, so
So this has been approved by the board.
it has not. It was,
Oh.
the committee of the whole discussed it for the concept of what they wanted to see in it. It is expected to be back at the board on the 17th for possible consideration. And so it was a two-part process, we shared the draft, we got considerable feedback on it, so I've incorporated that within this revised version, so.
So there is opportunity for comment if so desired? Okay.
I would say that's correct. Yep.
I don't wanna take a ton of time, but can we just go through a few things and
Sure.
then if anybody else has any comments? And-
Sorry, Peter.
No, go ahead.
Our role in this is.
The one little line.
Is because, yeah, they-
Sorry, one little line.
Let's find that
okay.
one.
because they want
Task
some of
1.1.
our general fund money.
Well, we have an obligation to do the Metro Market study per the development agreement, and that, if you remember, that was the conversation.
And we-
We have a project we need to do, the village identified this as the bigger project as a priority project, and we said, well, why not do this all as one? Or is it best to do it all as one project? And given the fact that the village made it a priority and is moving it forward very quickly,
Right.
I think it makes sense to have it incorporated in here.
And this was because the development agreement says that we
Says it,
shall do
yes,
it.
It has,
And still, we
it
don't
has
know who's
general
paying
language
for
that
it.
it will be done, correct.
And I would argue that 1.1, even though it's two lines, is like a pretty very relevant to this whole study. I mean, I think.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
yes.
so.
Yeah, I agree. Just because I've never seen, RFPs I've worked on are sort of very different than this layout. So
Sure.
I think most of this is just to help me understand, so I'll try not to take too much time, but, so under project background, that last sentence, it is hoped that through this comprehensive study, the village will develop a guide to reference as projects are requested and selected for implementation. I wasn't sure what that meant. And is there a deliverable that we're asking for from the various consultants as it relates to that? So
I think
that's
that-
just a question.
Yeah, that particular line refers to when we receive questions from either residents or businesses for whether it be no parking or a loading zone or things like that, that we would have a comprehensive study to say if we were to consider that, this would impact certain other areas. So I can just say in my office, I receive, you know, whether it's a business or a resident, calls for a stop sign, or calls for a speed bump, or calls for one-way traffic, or calls for someone to cut off a driveway. And so with this comprehensive study, we'd be able to look at it and see, well, this type of street, or this particular area of the village, you know, has been looked at, and it was not recommended to do something like that, so.
Okay, so it's by very fact of having the comprehensive study, that does give us some thing to reference as people are
Correct.
asking us one-off questions.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because right now, we've kind of been doing things, you know, piece by piece, and then those impact something else, which then drives something else, and so this was, the desire for comprehensive was understanding that if you redevelop or if you change one thing, it does have impacts elsewhere, so that's kind of what that's saying. I can clean it up if you feel necessary, but that's where that was coming from.
I would make it more of a definitive statement,
Okay.
but again, I,
Yeah,
Up
not,
to-
not
up
that we
to-
hope that
The
it
projected,
shall.
the
yeah,
projected goal
the
is.
comprehensive study must or will, or it is our expectation that this study and the study you provide to us will allow us to do this.
We'll develop a guide.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And so the village has no parking plan right now.
Correct.
Even
don't
part
have
of the overall
anything.
the overall village plan, there's no parking element to that. Right, okay.
It's in the code, it's in several agreements, it's largely in staff's understanding in their head and stuff like that, so the concept is to put it all one place, see what we have, so that we all, at least as staff and elected officials or appointed officials, know what to reference.
And is it fair to say then the requests you get fall in some sort of gray area most of the time with the code, and that's why it's not easy for you guys to answer?
I don't get parking requests as much, so if that's the question, I guess I'd have to defer to customer service. I get transportation questions, and correct, I have nothing to answer, because we don't have a village engineer. And so I'm just using my best,
So they're not really code
Guidance.
questions, they're
Well,
policy
let me
questions?
explain. There's there's parking, and there's only really there's two ordinances, daytime parking, nighttime parking. And there's a congested area around the university. And so there's things on the books that, before we had a very popular and bustling business district, it was used to control student population parking. But it's moving north of Capitol now, and people are starting to utilize this code, which is quite confusing. It's a congestion test of 60% of a road. The police chief has to go out and measure 3 times a day, and then there's no line, so is it really one parking space? How do you know if 60% of that street is parked up? It's very subjective. It's so what was meant for students over south of Capitol has creeped into the area of the business district, so residents can just petition to get this, and we've had 2 streets to do that, have done that. And so we really need to look at that comprehensively, like what happens if it keeps going. You know, all of a sudden now the residents are restricting all the parking, and there's nowhere for customers or to park. And so if you're investing in a business district, you don't want to choke your parking completely, and they have the ability to do that right now. And so that's one thing that just wasn't considered. There's no guide stop signs. Trustee Maher, at Public Safety for the last 3 years, he mapped out every stop sign by pen. That's the best we got, and it's up to the police chief. They petition the police chief and say, well, we think it's not safe. And so there's no real, like, does it make sense to have, like, is it safer to have stop signs at every
Okay, I don't,
block, things like that.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. I don't want to get into a detailed.
Yeah.
Parking. We may as we go through this.
I do.
I mean,
Just something, the sentence before the however, again, I bristle a little bit because I feel like this is,
which paragraph are you in?
however, those projects and requests were often performed without understanding or acknowledging.
I'm sorry, but can I just backtrack and go 1 second about the
Okay.
parking? Just anecdotally, speaking to all my neighbors, like my neighbor has a two duplex. So typically there would be 2 adults in each, so 4 cars, and they're constantly, she's fortunate she only has 2 adults, 1 for each 2-bedroom, constantly juggling cars, same with the people across the street. Even me and my wife, if you could park on the street once in a while, I know it would be a great relief to most of those owners.
We'll go to the public comment. Express that.
I was only appointed for 4 months, 30 minutes of,
So again, that sentence, the however sentence, I don't know that accomplishes anything saying that, other than saying past administrations didn't know what they were doing, which I don't think is right, and I don't think I don't know that I would want that out there in a public document to say it that way. I don't know that's true, that they didn't understand or acknowledge. I think it wasn't part of what was being done with respect to the project. So to say that is, I don't know, disingenuous, and I think there's a better way to say that. You can say, maybe say, an analysis of parking was not incorporated in these development projects or something like that. To say that people didn't understand or acknowledge that is,
I think we did do parking analysis in every study, it's just that there was never one done comprehensively.
I think we can say that.
Yeah.
I think saying it in a, I don't know, this is gonna be a public document, that line just bothered me a little bit. Okay. In terms of estimated timing, so this is super fast, it seems to me, right? And I just wanna confirm that we can get this done.
I personally
They-
think it's too fast.
They, again, if you think
In
it should be
terms of the
done.
RFP or in terms of the study?
Well, so we expect this to be going out when? When are consultants gonna actually get
It
this
was-
document?
And that's all subject to change, so I have no issues with changing it if that's the issue, but this was my primary thing to push forward, to
Yep.
get done by the budget of next year, so that's what's driving my desire to get it out. The RFP here is issued, 1/7/19 on the front page, that's the draft issuance.
Got it.
It is going back to the board on the 17th, if for some reason the board decides it's in good enough shape on the 17th, it could go out sooner. But the expectation was it would take 2 or 3 meetings to, work through these details, so.
I mean, I would defer, I just would, if you feel like this is, you're much more knowledgeable about this than I am, so if you feel that timeline works, great. Again, as I think of from the business side and RFPs, this would be
A deal killer.
crazy
Yeah.
fast.
For people that are
But
looking.
again, I hear you, you've been given direction that this is an important priority and we need to get it done as soon as possible.
You're worried that
So-
people responding to the RFP won't be able to
Right.
do this.
in
right?
2 days.
Yeah.
The staff,
Schedule
the
it,
staff,
Yes.
from the staff perspective.
And we wanna get a lot of good
right,
bids.
I wanna get bids from people we haven't used necessarily, just so we have a range of.
So, okay,
So then it may delay,
Yeah.
so then
Right.
everyone, so
Right.
if it needs to
Yeah.
take longer, then I think the board needs to be comfortable
Exactly.
that those results or whatever may not be accomplished in time for budget consideration, not
So I'm
knowing
just
the
asking the
result.
question,
It's fine.
is everybody
Heard.
comfortable with the
Sure.
timeline? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I say take as much time as we need. I mean, if this is the first comprehensive study, we'll be doing more, we'll do housing, we'll continue on,
That's
so we have
awesome.
a full plan, but.
Bless you.
Okay, then moving under project scope, we have the traffic counts and then the update to be collected as required. I wasn't sure what that, I mean, we want them to get traffic counts, right? So what is adding the to be collected as required?
So that came up in discussion, so Capital and Oakland have traffic counts from the DOT. Based on how in-depth the consultant needs to study certain streets, it was discussed that likely Morris, a busier street, will need traffic counts that we don't have through the DOT, but Murray perhaps will not, so depending on
Kensington.
what streets the consultant identifies that data is missing on, they would need to collect those as required, so if the CDA or board wanted to add specific areas that came up in discussion on Monday, I'm happy to include it, there have been no specific areas that we know of currently, that we know for sure that we want. If for sure we want a certain intersection, this would be the time and place to, throw that in there.
So as the consultant, so it seemed to me that would be a question that a consultant would ask after they read this, so where are we? I didn't know if you just provide some more clarity to them on the way you just said that, so they understand
Sure.
what that means. And again, these are all just for consideration, I'm not.
Yeah, I think, and at the Cal, we talked about certain streets and intersections that needed traffic counts, and that we were sort of still kind of vague on that point. But we were talking about like Murray and Kensington and a couple other places that we felt that we didn't have counts for that we would need. counts for. We thought it was important to them to the study.
Yeah, it would seem like you would want to list where you want traffic counts, 'cause otherwise.
Be more specific, I guess.
That's a huge line item if
Mhm.
they start doing traffic counts at 50 different spots.
Right. I mean,
versus
if we know
two.
there are certain
Right.
ones that we want,
Right.
I would say we put those in, and again, maybe part of their process is.
They could recommend an
Yeah, maybe they do a
additional-
high-level review and say, oh, you've
Right.
identified these 10, I think we should also
Yeah,
have
so
these
how do we
other
know what
6.
to request, if, you know?
I think
Yeah.
based on questions and public comments to date, I think we have an idea of
Yeah,
what
we
you're
do.
saying, that
Yeah.
there's 3 or
Yes.
4 hot
Yeah.
areas
Yep.
that we all know, well, you all know, I don't know. And then beyond that.
Yeah, most of the
Yeah.
time they're surrounding the business district.
Yeah. And then, B2, the recommend options for, so, this relates to that prior comment, right? This is to provide,
Correct.
this is for you to have
Right.
a metric or,
Yep.
okay. That connects now. So. Okay, really minor on the top of page 3, that's now item D, I
Oh,
believe,
sure.
instead of F. And then it's, again, this, probably my own confusion, it's design approval and implementation, and I was, of what?
I would say street projects, but it's not necessarily construction, so it's, I mean, so it references transportation and infrastructure improvements within one, so it,
And are we still doing infrastructure, or have we struck infrastructure?
I think that
Because
was
we have
struck somewhere
infrastructure
else.
conditions.
I mean, bike transportation, bike stuff is infrastructure, it's just
Okay,
not as
okay.
DPW centric as perhaps the first draft had been, it's more transportation stuff, but I did leave the word infrastructure in there, but I guess a bike infrastructure is transportation, that probably could be removed, I have no issues with that.
And again, this is probably more my own lack of knowledge, just when I read design approval and implementation, I just wasn't sure what it related to.
I'm
Sure.
guessing that Rebecca put that in because I remember hearing her say a lot that, you know, trustees will get a request, they'll come to the assistant village manager, sometimes Bart will get the request, and we just don't have a process for transportation requests when they
What's
talk
the
about.
process and how much money do you wanna put on it? Every time someone comes in, how much resource do you wanna allocate to, I want a stop sign, I want a speed bump, I wanna,
Yeah.
and how is that gonna flow through it? Cause right now it's pretty subjective.
Right now it's pretty substantial amount of time that we put.
Substantial amount and also subjective, yeah, okay.
And then just that first bullet, document existing, so we are existing review, approval, and implementation processes that are not well documented, is that what we're saying?
Right, so
Okay.
how it had been done in the past, how it's being done, I think that'd be good for us all to understand, because I don't think we're gonna find much consistency there.
Okay,
Can I just clarify for 1 second? There's 2 ways a government can do something. They can be the decision maker and go forward with a plan, and here's what we're gonna do for transportation circulation after they adopt the plan. Or they can do it reaction where the citizens come and request. So I think that's just what has to be decided of what that balance is. If we have a plan that's a lot of public input, we took our time, it's comprehensive, and we feel pretty comfortable when we adopt it, we may just say, this is what we're doing for the next few years. That might limit the amount of time that we have one-off questions or requests.
okay, and then we get to 1.1, and my only questions here, and I'm sorry, I couldn't find I think I thought the development agreement was at home, and then I got home and I think it's at work. So I just wanted to make sure there was nothing specific in that we should make sure we call out here. This is a very general statement, and I
Sure.
think that's fine, I just wanna make sure is anything in there, again, that we feel like we wanna call out to make sure they do cover? Like, wasn't part of it, again, a recount of the parking spaces and what's allocated to the village versus what's allocated?
So that was in the parking agreement, which we
Okay.
actually just
Talked
went
about?
through, yeah,
Okay.
so there was always 2 things, one was the
Right.
parking agreement, one
Right.
was the traffic study.
Oh, okay, so again, my question, just make sure,
Yep, I
I
can
mean, this is
confirm
fine,
the
but just make
language
sure there's no,
matches.
we don't have any specific requirements that we need to make sure we do.
What is the deliverable on the Metro Market traffic study?
Parking
It's
Yeah, I
really
think it's a-
egress and ingress.
it's a
and
flow
this-
study.
It's a flow of, so one was the parking, just, we have 50 spots, they're on the 4th floor. Do we wanna bring 25 down to the 2nd floor? That was the parking study. So it's not really a study, that's just like, let's negotiate and
assessment,
decide
yeah.
based on
Right.
who's parking. But then the other one was, it's a mess. I mean, like the egress, we're turning lefts, we're turning rights, we
Yeah,
have, crosswalks, you can go in both entrances, and so do we wanna
People driving 30 miles
modify
an hour down Oakland Ave.
that circulation pattern to make it more safe, or just, a recheck?
And so there are
afterwards of them?
recommendations on how can we improve the flow.
So shouldn't we sort of say that current conditions are not good
Yes.
and we want them fixed, essentially, versus please study stuff and let us know stuff?
Call it out, call it out.
I mean,
call it
let's call out
more.
what,
Well, we
Yeah.
what
feel
we're
they're not
actually.
good, but.
Well, right, but let's tell them why they're doing the study. The study isn't to just do a study because it's in a development agreement.
Can they be improved?
Yeah,
And the
that's-
egress and.
And what are we improving?
Improving
Speed, ingress, or egress, or
Yeah.
both? I mean, personally, I don't think there's a problem. Personally, I go in and out of there every other day, but that's my personal
You don't get phone
experience.
calls.
study.
There's like one a day.
Well, right, but I also, personal experience is personal experience.
Right.
So,
There's a range
I'm
of, like-
comfortable driving a car, some people aren't,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
So again,
How-
maybe just,
where-
Yeah, and that goes to my point of leaving it somewhat more open-ended, because I do hear some people saying it's fine, I hear some people saying it's a disaster. I don't want to
Exactly.
imply within the study that I know the answer to it,
Yeah.
that's what the study will tell
Yeah.
me, so, but I can be more
Well,
specific
then
on
that's, I
speed.
think, what we should say. I think we should say what it is, we're trying to discern whether.
If there is a
it's good-
problem.
If there is a
And if
problem
there
or
is,
not.
what are-
Or
what
you
are
can
they-
say we get a call
Or
today.
you're
I mean,
saying, there's absolutely a problem, let's fix it. I disagree with that statement.
Right.
So, what are we trying to figure out?
But if they're
I
getting,
don't think we know.
if they're getting a call a day, it means enough people, I agree with you, enough people have
Yeah.
a problem with it. So maybe right turn only out of that one south
Well, is it-
entrance or something.
I guess my feeling is that this study should tell us if we have a problem or not, so we can go back to
And
every
if we
person
do,
that
what are their
calls
suggestions?
and say, thank you for your concern, we've studied this, there is no problem.
and I think it's at this.
I mean, that's,
He just hung up the line.
You're hired, you're gonna be our customer
it's this,
service.
this
not putting in charge of customer service.
1985, baby.
Joe or I should not be in charge
Never.
of customer service.
Okay,
That was a little
Is
harsh.
that good direction?
Yes, I can
General
clean that up,
sense of why
to
we
make
are
sure
doing
we're
these
identifying
things.
whether or not there's a problem first.
Well,
Okay.
I think the other thing too to keep in mind is once a contractor is selected, the team will be sitting down with them and have these
Yes.
kinds of conversations. We think this might be a problem.
Right.
yeah,
We want you to, really, so.
it doesn't necessarily have to be
Right.
put in here.
That was
but-
actually what I was gonna say, was,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I think that we want to keep the RFP somewhat vague, so we can make sure that as we're selecting a vendor, we have that opportunity to really have that discussion. We think that this is an issue, and
But you're the
allow them
expert,
to,
so-
right, and
As
allow
long as
them
the
to do that
deliverable,
role.
as long as the deliverable is a recommendation that there either is or is not a problem,
Of
or
course.
recommended changes.
Right, right.
That's
And we're-
cool.
We're looking
Yeah.
for them to be the experts and to provide that
Yeah,
expert knowledge.
yeah.
Okay, then under task 2, parking analysis, do we, I didn't really sort of see in here, do we want them to do an inventory of parking? Do you consider that, is that important, and is that one of these provisions?
Kinda have that.
In number 2.
I see identify inventory gaps and solutions, again,
Sure, I think to find a gap, you'd have to have a
do the
case
count,
study.
okay, fair enough, yep.
But I think we have that, I just wanna be clear, because I've spent a lot of time with Diane, and we know exactly how many spaces are
Okay.
on Oakland and
Great.
So
Wilson.
we can
and all-
provide that to them, and then they
Yeah,
can identify.
so they don't
whether or
have
not
to
they think that's-
redo that.
And then it would seem to me, and again, it could be terms, my lack of knowledge, do we want sort of a usage analysis? Like, we say we don't have, everybody says we don't have enough parking, but when you actually as I read other communities' information, as you do an analysis, actually, there's tons of parking, but people don't use it. You know, people say there's no
There's not
parking,
enough parking
there's no
in
parking
front of
around
the store
camp,
they
but
wanna
nobody,
go to.
yeah, nobody goes,
Right.
there's a
No
huge
one wants to walk
there's a
up
huge
half a
parking
block.
structure behind Walgreens that nobody uses, but they say, I
Right.
can't park to go to camp. I'm like, 30 yards away is a million
Yeah.
parking spots that you can use.
I actually
So-
talked to Paul
Right,
at
during
camp
utilization.
about this, said,
I love parking there, I just pull right in.
previously, they said, do you have any issues with parking? And I solicited opinions from 3 different bars, and they were like, well, whatever, it is what it is.
So again, my just question
Sure,
was,
I can,
are we asking them for any kind of, is
I'll
that,
make the ask
again, I
clear.
don't, you don't have to, I'm just offering these.
We might, so we did that on Wilson, so we wanted to know if we took away one side of the street of parking, how many people were actually using the street. So I think if it comes down to a recommendation from the, from the consultant heading towards, we wanna, this should be more of a thoroughfare, when we take away parking, then you're gonna wanna know, well, are people using it?
Okay. Just a question, on item 3, the capitalized residential congested commuter area, is that normally when I see capitalized like that, that's a defined term?
yeah,
I didn't see-
that's in the code.
It's the
It is.
RCA, and just so
Excellent,
everyone knows,
okay.
we're not touching it.
Yep, that's what the clarification
Got it,
says.
yep,
Okay.
not to include, yes, okay.
That's the
Um,
UWM.
That's the one that Milwaukee fought 10 years for, and we
Yeah.
copied them.
Yeah.
Down on
I'm
item,
not
down on item E2, document existing enforcement procedures, again, just confirm, currently we do not have those documented, the enforcement procedures?
I'm sure the police department does, I don't know that I have them, the hope was that they're incorporated into the study so that anyone can reference what they are.
Okay,
Is it just enforcement? We talked on the phone about this. The point is that we have a very old system, like Duncan, Milwaukee had been using it 20 years ago when I was there. And so it's very customized. For some reason, the past administration customized it to a T. So if we wanna just change our regulations for parking, that whole system has to be changed. And that's money. So we wanna know exactly what has to be done. And is that the system we wanna stay with? How long's our contract? Just, there's no one here in the village that understands the software.
and I guess I was thinking much more simply than that, I was thinking of managing the consultant's time, and do we want them spending time documenting our existing enforcement
It's probably more of a
procedures? Is
incorporate,
obtain or
yeah.
incorporate, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't want them saying, yeah, we
Yeah,
spent
good
3
point.
hours
Right.
documenting, you're like, no, we didn't want you to do that.
And the software one was the one before that, President Orlick, I don't know if you have an updated version or not, but I did include, a review of the software capabilities. Oh, you do have it, okay. It was E1.
Top of page 4, there were a couple, 2 spots, you say work with working
Oh,
group,
sure,
that's
yeah.
now the internal
Correct.
technical advisory. Item D, incorporate feedback and ideas into traffic parking analysis. I thought, so we're having public comment, are we asking them to incorporate everything? Or is there a filter?
There should be a filter.
Yeah,
correct?
so,
Maybe utilize the feedback to provide recommendations or.
yeah, because I feel like, maybe they're,
Rather than incorporate.
aren't they providing the feedback and ideas to the internal technical advisory group? And then that group maybe decides what, I don't know, it just seemed to me there's gotta be some secondary step before they put that into the analysis, right?
Correct.
Okay. Proposal content, you had not exceed 20 single site, I was just curious, why did we limit it? Do consultants tend to just go on and on and on and on, you have a 300-page proposal, and is 20 the right? I guess I wouldn't wanna limit them if they have a lot of good ideas and.
Which number are you on?
I think it-
Sorry,
That was the
under
proposal
proposal
content.
content, you've defined it as
Oh,
20
yeah,
single-sided
why?
pages. Oh, sorry, up above, there's another technical advisory.
Yeah. This is just the standard village template, so that we don't have to review 100-page documents.
no,
But
I'm
if
with
we
you
want,
on
if we
that.
think of, 40-page proposal as
I
manageable
think
as well.
should propose a concise, or,
Sure.
or if you feel
Concise.
it's important to,
We could look at that.
not
It's
to.
just because if they wanna show a parking study as an attachment, it's gonna be.
Yeah, this does not include appendices,
Yeah,
I can make that clear
you
too.
did, yeah, you had something else on appendices.
So yeah, if they wanted to attach that, I'm fine doing that, but I just don't wanna have to review
Mhm.
a 100-page proposal.
Oh, come
But-
on.
The
You know,
appendices,
you know you do.
the appendices,
I
they can
do.
get binders of, they can get binders and appendices, that's fine. But we can take a look at the 20-page to see if that's.
Or put it as an
limiting.
executive summary or something, not to exceed
Jessica's
20
used to that.
pages, and then they can
Yeah.
add everything else to the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because village residents are gonna ask to see it probably, and they're not gonna read 100 pages, so if you have an executive summary,
Mhm.
kind of,
Well, this is just the
Boils it down.
proposal, not.
Right.
This is just
Correct,
for the
this is just the
proposal.
proposal.
gotcha.
Yep.
Right,
Yeah, that's why I don't think it should have to be that long.
It shouldn't.
No,
yeah,
it shouldn't.
I know.
Oh,
To
God,
make the
gotcha,
point.
gotcha.
I didn't see anything for references. Would we wanna be asking for references for their prior, I know you asked for samples of prior work. I didn't know if we wanted to speak to any other communities or clients about their experiences.
Would that be the selection criteria section?
I think it'd be something it's a deliverable that they need to provide, so I think you have, I think it's.
Proposal content
It's
would
probably
be-
the proposal content, I think it's whatever you wanna do, 4 references, some number of references of
Personal
of
experience.
applicable projects.
And I can go back, I believe the board just discussed that with the engineering RFP, so there probably is specific language of what they wanted with that RFP. Am I correct on that? I remember, I think trustee Menta brought that specific one up, so I can look at that to see, to incorporate that.
I have a question too. Is there anything about subcontract, like, I always bring this up every single time, because sometimes they have teams, and so, is that in here? Is it assignment or subcontract?
There's assignment or subcontract,
There's a
there's an
section
item on
somewhere.
page 5,
I see that,
it may not be assigned or subcontract.
but that's different.
About written consent.
Just,
What's your
from my
concern?
experience, because it's parking and transportation, in my experience, they usually team up if there's someone that they know
Mhm.
that's just more of a parking.
Yeah, there's assignment or
Yeah.
subcontract.
Yeah,
The
so they
contract
can
may
do
not
it, but
be
they just have to
assigned.
get our consent to do it.
Mhm.
It may not be assigned or a subcontract by the firm without written consent of the village.
But can't you just, we always talk about this, the board, identify all parking?
Within the proposal? or-
Yeah, and any subcontractor that is on your team?
It says that it should be submitted within the scope of the proposal.
Okay.
Yep. And then the only other, and this is likely an unfair question, under the, the proposal content, we're asking for their ideas and for their expertise. But our deliverables, I guess, our project scope is fairly prescriptive. We were really asking for specifically, we're telling them exactly what we want and what they should do. So I just wanna make sure we're not, if they have an idea, I don't want them to think they have an idea and they're like, oh, well, they're this is exactly what they're asking for, so this is exactly what we're gonna give them, and then we lose out on a good idea. I don't know whether that could happen, but, maybe, again, I think that's it is an unfair question on my part, but as I read this, that was and again, I think that's the difference between RFPs I've done and a municipal RFP, where I think you do have to be maybe a little more prescriptive, but maybe there's just a sentence somewhere that says,
Any other
nothing,
ones?
something maybe not currently included here, but you feel would be an important addition, we would wanna know that, or something like that,
Okay.
just to let them
Yeah,
know
I think
that,
that's a good suggestion,
I like that.
because we know what we know.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And they do.
And that's why we're hiring
And if we
them.
knew how to solve it, we would have.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't
haven't,
know,
so
and that's what we're asking
let's
them to
ask
do,
someone
so.
else. Okay.
That was all I had. The rest seemed to me to be sort of boilerplate and, again, I appreciate this is a lot of work to put this together,
The fact that it is prescriptive is good in a way.
so. In a way,
Mhm.
yes, it is. Make sure
So they
that-
know what you get what you need out
Yes.
of it, and they know what to do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah.
I have one other question. For bike, pedestrian, transit, scooters are on the horizon. There's new technology coming out for bike share where you use your phone and it's powered and it's very much no docking systems. So where can we get, if someone's really, they're the experts and they have knowledge of what's on the horizon, we want that to be shared. I don't know where it falls.
I mean, and at a 1D, other,
But that's gonna be a big scope. I feel like
No.
could be a big scope
Change.
change.
Well, if they're looking at existing, say, they say review existing accommodations and modifications to them, just if there's new technology they know about, just to make us aware throughout the study so that we can consider that. It's gonna have, you know.
Well, I guess you have the costing out where we could actually strike that, you know, if they said
Right.
it's gonna be $5,000
Sure.
to do that.
Yeah,
and
I
we
think
can sort of
that's-
say,
Yeah.
thank you,
It should be a separate line item.
and he's got it laid out that way.
Yeah,
Every
it could be a
item.
huge thing,
Sure.
or it could be a really tiny thing, and they could interpret that.
I mean, I think it's a
Either
good
way.
point, you know, other communities that had, Milwaukee's deal, you know, and so maybe,
Right.
maybe the point is, what have they learned anything in their work with other communities that, as we are gonna be confronted with this in the future, help us be smarter about the right way to approach it, maybe that, I mean, that's, I think, what we're asking, what do we need to think about, what do we need to consider
Exactly.
as this moves into our community, because it will, I
Yeah.
mean, this is, we're the perfect community for
And the
this.
only
I
thing-
would do it, I would ride a scooter down to work every day, I mean.
The electric scooter.
Exactly, electric scooter, yeah.
Yeah, and the only other thing I don't know anything about, because I'm so removed now, that is the hop, is it, if there's any plans for it to connect through Shorewood, I don't know, because I haven't been involved in 10 years now.
That's a good question
But-
too,
That'd be great, just to,
yeah.
even just a one conversation with, you know, whoever's in charge, whatever entity is in charge of that.
I was downtown last night, and here that hop came, and there must have been 25 people on it.
Yep.
And I was just, you
What's-
know, yeah, it was
I
great.
just remember, well, it was 10 years ago, it was gonna go down Prospect and
Right.
Farwell, and it's gonna connect somewhere, and so.
At some point to UWM at least.
Right, and that's our community, so I just feel like we should just at least have one dialogue with the entity that's in charge of that.
Sorry, I forgot, just for my own, we have complete, I just didn't know what that term meant, complete street.
Yeah, so it's a common planning term in
I
terms
hate
of,
that, Stu.
yeah. I can modify it if you
No,
want.
I just wanna know what it means.
So it's a street for all users, so that means pedestrians,
Yep, okay.
businesses, as well as motorists, and, you know, it's, so we plan for all users essentially, it's a
Okay.
complete street.
And I'm sure they know what that term means as well.
I would
so
hope.
I just didn't.
Nope, it's good clarification.
Okay, does anybody else have any comments on this? I think really, to me, the only action item back to us at some point would be just to make sure item 1.1 is inclusive of everything we're required to do in the development agreement. Other than that, everything else was just suggestions for you and for the board to consider.
And if you guys, I mean, as partners, so as a planner, we try to get all the partners involved at the beginning to really buy in, because that's when you have a stake in it, so you're our partner. And so it's not just the board considering what we wanna study. If you have a financial stake in as CDA, you are, you know, you're gonna be responsible for some of the outcomes as well, like we're all in it together.
Sure.
So definitely feel free not just to recommend to the board, but to put in your thoughts if there's something you wanna see.
Permanent CDA member parking spaces throughout the village.
There we go.
Right in front of the camp bar.
Right in front of the camp bar, yes.
I work next to Rebecca on purpose, like, you can't do them. They'll come get you.
Okay, anything, again, we have no real action items on item 4 of the agenda. We'll run through that, provide comments. Next item is the update on the Ascension tax status. Do we have the draft?
When we respond back, they will be talking to the people they need to talk to.
Yes.
And then we'll have contact
Really
with us
not
and schedule a meeting.
voluntarily making extra
So I
payments.
have a note on my calendar. I should reconnect.
Can I?
Where's the draft letter? It's in this
Is it in
packet?
I didn't do that?
Yeah, I think I saw
Oh,
it.
goodness.
The letter wasn't in there.
Yeah, I don't think it's in here.
I will send it out to you. I'd be happy to share the letter.
Was it short?
It was one page, but, that reflected back in reference to their application. The person who I was supposed to talk to was out of the country for several weeks. And so I had attempted to get a hold of someone else in the office and had some communication, and they came back and had relayed, that they had let us know that there was gonna be tax exempt status. within the scope of their application, so we provided them a link to their application, and then I spent like an hour and a half viewing the plan commission video of which it was discussed, and there's actually a specific reference point where tax status came up, not within the scope of a pilot, but, and there were several members from Ascension there, so I kind of referenced them to that as well.
I have a question, so I just read the letter and I'm getting up to speed. We probably should talk with the attorney. Did the plan commission have, I know we have those 5 criteria. If we had known, could we have considered that?
I believe, and we can confirm again with Nathan, that the response would be no.
Right. So I think we could have, because there's a very general category, but again, it's just like the welfare and the financial, economic well-being of the village not for a parking exception, but for a special or conditional use. So I want clarity on that, because then that's a big deal if they didn't notify us.
And for every other application, to your point, I think in the email that you said that came forward, is that something that you do wanna be asking?
Yeah, and I guess that was my question, is there any, can we do anything that gives us as a community leverage earlier in the
Yes.
process to
We can amend our
obtain
TID
this?
plan.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, that
So-
to me, again, this isn't really I don't think this is a CDA,
No, I brought
issue.
it back to,
No.
for information.
because yes, exactly
Yeah.
right, because it does impact us and it does, but I don't know that well, the question is, are there any actions we could take as CDA to assist in providing the village with leverage
Yes.
in these instances?
Yeah, there is a TID, so.
Early on.
Mhm.
If we have an open TID, every TID project plan should have a pilot clause in it.
Yeah, but this is not
Because-
part of we're not providing any financing here, this is just essentially moving into
Oh,
a
I'm just saying,
building.
but it's still in a TID district, so we're not talking, so there's 2 ways to require pilots. The way we used to do it is you put it in the project plan, so anyone in the district, it doesn't matter if you're providing any money to them. The other way is to leave it out of the project plan and to put it into a development agreement, but
Right.
that's only if you're providing financial incentives or.
So we could have
sometimes-
it, so we could have, back in the day, put it in the TID 1 project plan, and then even though any business coming in without any interaction with the village at all would be forced to make payments to us. Any nonprofit would be forced to make payments to us in lieu of taxes? That seems to be
I'd be curious if that's legal.
Yeah,
So
that's
I've-
true, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I've seen it before, or administered it most through zoning in the past, so if you had,
That makes sense to me.
Rezone.
where it's like in the zoning language right away, so anyone who looks at the district, but the pet, or the,
Okay, so
is one option that could be
I
explored.
think it's legal because we've invested, it's like, I'm just referencing the park use for a second, we took down a freeway, we invested $40 million. The taxpayers, the government's health would suffer if the district went to nonprofits. Because you gotta recoup your investment and it's taxpayer money, so I would like to look into that, cause I'm pretty sure we've done it before, but that would protect your investment.
I get that ethically, but I wonder.
Well, even if
you
there's
can
no
discriminate.
bids and no overlay districts or anything, if
Yeah,
80% of the commercial space were taken up by nonprofits,
Yeah.
the village would go under.
Would be
Yeah.
in trouble.
Right, an exception
True.
is like,
True, but we
If we
also
look at
need
it
to
like
pay
in
back our,
extremes,
but I mean, but we
but
have,
then we have this on top,
Right.
you know,
So I guess again, the question
which is
to me
why we
is,
started talking about this in the first place.
as you go through this, just let's make sure we as the CDA are smarter about this, and as we move forward, what do we need to do or consider to make sure we have the opportunity to ask for this?
So we're in front of it instead of behind
Yes.
it like we are right now.
Yes.
And I think before,
Thanks for
we put all these safeguards or these conditions into our agreements, but I think regarding this particular incident, we also could just appeal to their community spirit.
Which is, I
and-
think, what we're, that is the.
You haven't met, you haven't met us since.
no, right, but
But that's what we have,
Yes, that's what we
and,
have, yeah.
you know,
I don't,
but we shouldn't just say we can't do it,
No, absolutely
because,
not. And Rebecca, that's exactly what we're doing.
yeah, good, cause it gets them some good publicity if they're willing to, I mean, they're
And I think, you know, there's some
Have they
saying no,
maintained
there's some
since
downside to them
it's-
saying, I
Right.
think they
must
make a
be-
statement to the
Right,
community.
Right.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, I'm just curious, you know, this is not, we're not the first ones to probably challenge Ascension on this
Right.
very issue. Are there other communities that have successfully navigated this with Ascension? Because it seems so basic, you know, in terms of like their status as a nonprofit. It's not,
Mhm.
this is not the Boys and Girls Club,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
But it's Catholic.
Oh, well.
It's
Try
not
with them
secular.
too, if they try to come in here.
Okay. So again, no action item on our part, this is just continued. So, as you see it, Rebecca, next step, well, it's, ball's in their court, correct? They are discussing internally?
Mhm.
Okay, and they'll be coming back to us with some response. And it's just a, as far as, they have no other process to go through, right? They're done with all of their village process to do what it is they wanna do.
They had to pull permits, right?
They're at design review board currently, and they were held last night. They wanna, they need, based on their floor plan, to screen the portions of the front windows for medical privacy purposes. And the design review board was not on board with their current plan, so they're coming back on the 20th.
We don't like that.
Yeah.
Correct. And the design review board was, that's why they were held. They're coming back because I had also pushed back on that as well, so. They are still doing that. They need permits, they'll need occupancy. There are several
You can't deny it.
things administratively,
That we
right?
can-
Administratively that they'll keep going through, but not necessarily at the board level.
And again, I guess there's no other steps in the process where this could come up, or we could push again, or ask for this, or
Only
make it
if-
contingent, or.
Only if there
Make a
was,
single TID for that building.
I do feel, and I just haven't talked to we have talked to Bruce Block probably, but I do feel if we talked about and asked questions about the financial status of their, and they did not disclose that they were gonna be, and it's in a tax increment finance district, and it is a condition we could have considered,
Right.
then we could have something, we'd have a much better negotiation start than not knowing that information, so.
I'd just be curious, like, there's an Extension clinic in Whitefish Bay right on Silver Spring, right?
No, it's
Aurora.
Same thing.
Mhm.
Right,
I
but
mean,
like,
you're right,
what
it's
do
the
they,
same-
what do
same
they,
issue.
yeah, like, you know,
Aurora's
have we
not
talked to like
nonprofit.
Bay
I
to
know.
say, hey,
Aurora's
It's not
not a
Catholic.
Oh,
nonprofit
they're
though.
it's not a
I
nonprofit?
don't
Right, no.
think so, no.
Most hospitals aren't.
Yeah,
No, it's like boondoggle, it's a joke.
right, yeah.
Okay.
They're Catholic only tax reasons and failure to pay for health or.
It's,
All right, any other questions on item 5?
No.
All right, item 6, parking agreement meeting. Or do you wanna provide?
So you guys did meet with.
Did it happen?
We did,
I had the flu.
So President was not.
on December 3rd, and we met with the parties, we've documented some notes, and we, with the agreement to the group, had said that we would redistribute some just working notes, because we don't wanna misinterpret or not document correctly how one of the partners at the table had followed. So we had, in general, we're gonna be waiting for the responses from those people to kind of review it. But I just felt it was important annually as we move forward that we continue to document conversations as they happen, because if not, we're kind of left in the discussion or the position of, well, what happened over the last couple of years? So, not a novel, just a page or two. So, we'll be following up with them to get their comments on that as well, and to make sure that it's an accurate reflection of how they felt. Two of the issues that are within, not issues, but two of the reasons why we were meeting within the parking agreement was to determine whether up to 1/2 of the 50 village parking spaces from level 4, which is the top level of the structure, could be relocated to the second level of the parking structure during the daytime.
And the intent of that was, if the parking structure was all parked up, we wanted to make sure that there was easy access for customer parking, public parking. So that's, I believe that was the intent of putting the clause in there, to renegotiate, to bring them down.
Okay. the conclusion, from that we gathered from the meeting is that people didn't feel that it was necessary to relocate 25 spaces from, the first or the fourth level of the structure down to the second level. Primarily because the first, second, and third level, are the ones that are most frequently parked. There's not a significant amount of activity that's currently going on in the fourth level. And in the comments that we documented, which we're also gonna verify with the people who were there, they kind of go through explanation of what their thoughts are on the first, second, and third.
The good news was that my assumption was Roundy's is gonna get fed up with all of the customers parking there, all the employees and customers parking in their spots. They own the entire, they pay for the entire structure, they pay for all the taxes, so, but then they let customers from all these other places park. So the good news is, according to Bart, when I talked to him on the phone, is that Roundy's doesn't think there's a problem at all,
No.
which was amazing. I was like, that's great news, so, that doesn't mean it'll always be that way, and then we'll really need to consider, but
Are those 50 spaces typically full?
ours,
No, I
we have eight people rent the spaces at night by permit, but
Yeah,
the
I'm just
intent, the thought
That
is,
one time.
we need to get the employees off the streets, from Blue Egg, from the daycare, from a lot, because then it frees up customers parking on the street, which is where
How could
they
you
want.
enforce that?
I think you
By
just
per-
have the employer inform,
Right, you
When
just
you-
work
when
with the
you park, you
employers
just park
and
in
you
the-
provide them
it's
with
not
the pass, and the employer usually pays for them, and then it's a permit. And then they go, you can't really 100% enforce, but it's usually a partnership. And that would free up more than, if Randy's is saying the customers already park here and we're fine with it. So if we could, but we would need to change it from 2 hours to all day parking.
And they would have
That's
to
not-
pay for that?
Yeah, it would be a permit. Like the daycare
I was gonna say,
has 30
Why would they
employees and
pay for that?
they're willing to pay for it.
The plan commission required the daycare
Yep.
to provide parking for their employees, whether that be
Cause they
outside
don't
the
meet the
village or in the
parking
village.
requirement.
So as part of their conditional use review, the plan commission said the use is fine, but you don't have capacity for 30 employees, find a place for them to park. And he was willing to do that.
And do a shuttle, and this is cheaper for him.
Right.
So if we could
Same
provide
thing
at the
with-
fourth level of that, that'd be a win-win for him. And they're not allowed to be on the street, so if we do monitor that and see that that's a violation of the conditional use permit.
Yeah. Same thing
For
with
the
like,
daycare specifically?
no,
Correct.
not just daycare. So for Ruckus, most of the buildings in an urban center will not meet your parking code,
Right.
right? And so you can condition your approval based on them telling their employees to park off the street.
as long as you do condition it.
As
So
long
if
as
you
you-
haven't
yeah.
conditioned it, then you're right,
You
you
don't
So
have.
have to be,
have
but-
all
So for
those businesses
existing-
been conditioned to that, like Blue's Egg, for example? Are they conditioned that their
No.
employees are not allowed to park on the street?
But this gives them a spot.
Right, that gives them.
So
an-
they're-
Like if we ever went to
For them, it's
meters,
a
for
request.
instance,
Moving
then, or
forward,
a
then
2 hour
maybe, but
meeting, you know,
Right.
2 hour, they have to keep moving their car.
Yeah.
Winter, the parking regulations, one side of the street you can't park on, and now there's no spots because it's really big, so.
But the
actually,
50 spots, are they, maybe I don't understand what the 50 spots are. Those are restricted parking that are by permit only?
No, okay,
At
so we
night.
have
At
50
night.
public spots that we paid for, basically, that was what we got in return for our
Right.
Sungrow investment. And, they're public, so they were intended to be for customers, to make sure that people had places to park for all the businesses.
Non-pick and save customers?
Correct.
Correct, for the train. But what we're finding is, no one goes to the fourth floor, customers don't wanna park there, it's not an easy, structure to navigate. And so, they're going underutilized, but at night, we do rent them and split our permit with the,
Gotcha,
with
okay.
So we can't
ground
park on the
user.
street overnight, so they park there.
So,
Exactly.
right now, we have 8 people parking there, and the Light Horse, we have way more, so.
But an employee from, I guess my
But
question
during the
is,
day,
my employee from Blue's Egg can park in one of those 50 spots?
not right now, because they're 2 hour.
Okay.
Oh,
So
in
we
the
need to,
structure there,
we
too?
have to get their agreement, all parties, to change it from 2 hours to all
Gotcha,
day.
okay.
So the village spaces are 2 hours, however, in the conversation, and I don't know if I have a copy of this or not, I think Blue's Eggs employees can park within the structure as part of the development. They indicated any employee within the development could be parking there, but not necessarily of the Ruckus or Casa. I have not seen that agreement, but that's what they, because I had asked where Blue's Eggs were parking, and they all seemed on board that their employees were currently allowed to do that within some sort of agreement. So I don't know, that's not within the village agreement, but just as a heads up, they,
Just because they're a tenant in that
Blues
building.
In the building,
Blues
yeah,
Egg, I
in
believe,
the-
is, their employees currently are parking there.
They do not have any spots for Blues Egg employees. I
Is
just
this,
want to make that clear.
is this
I
included
made
in
that
our
clear before Blues Egg.
parking study?
This was separate.
Well, we should include it
Interject here?
when they did the study, right?
Yeah, because as the planner back then, when that parking structure was done, that was for 100% of the Mosaic employees and customers. I mean,
There's only
and
20
maybe it
spots.
wasn't maybe written that
It's written,
descriptively, but
yeah, it is. Read it.
no, that was the,
Yeah, they have 20. There's a map. It's only 4 pages long. There's a map. It says 20 for the commercial tenants.
I
So,
think the 20 for the.
or
The
20 for
for
the
the
residential.
apartments.
it says
30
extra,
for
right,
the
Yeah, on the
extra
second
for the
floor.
apartments, that's a number.
Correct.
Yeah,
But there was no
it says 30.
hard number for the commercials.
I don't have it with me unfortunately, but there is a
It's
map.
30.
So the second item,
One sec, should we include this as a line item in our parking study? We're doing inside
I don't think
Metro
we need
Market?
to, because, we could, but what do we want to study?
The most effective use of our 50 spaces. If we're only utilizing 8 or 50, that's income
At
revenue.
night? I don't think we
Yeah.
can market it.
I think that's.
I think the problem is right now, people
Yeah,
just don't
people
even know
just
they're
don't
there.
know.
Yeah, I was
Option.
gonna say, there's no.
Yeah, I've been
I think it's more of a
asking-
negotiation with the owners and its marketing and communication.
Right.
so this, or am I paid to move on to the
Yep.
second one?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, one of the other aspects of the agreement was whether, we're reviewing whether 25 of the village parking spaces in the structure should maintain a 2-hour time limit, between the hours of 8 AM and 8 PM. And the conclusion amongst the group was yes, that the 2-hour time limit should continue without enforcement as the matters appear to be working smoothly, with possible consideration of daytime parking permits for off-site employees. So, one of our next steps, once they kind of go through these notes and confirm with what I'm re-communicating I heard, cause you never wanna assume you heard it one way. Would, follow up on next steps to President Rosick's point, particularly at the 4th level of, what can we explore, for employees of different businesses in the business district.
Do they commit to when they would come back to us?
They seem a very amenable group, so I have a feeling that once I send this out, I drafted and then we had a busy week and so Bart reviewed just because I wanted to make sure that it had, 2 years or 4 years are always
Yes.
better than
Yep.
2. So we're gonna send it out to them today and they seemed very amenable to coming
Moving
back.
forward.
And then I just asked that moving forward, we may do the annual review in September. Because I always seem to review the parking structure in December on the coldest days.
Yeah.
We're always walking through the
Walk around.
parking structure, and it's like, why don't we do this in September?
Did we specifically ask, we wanna change our parking regulations from 2 hours to all day? Did we make that request?
On level 4 or level 2?
Just 4, keeping them all on 4.
It started with, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it started with, the discussion, we brought up, Casa Corazon. And he had asked for their information directly because he wanted to speak with them regarding their shifts and how that worked. And he said that he's open to that opportunity, he just wants to talk with them first and, it seemed like the first time he had been, approached with that type of,
Who's he?
the Dan Farrell from Roundy's.
They're not his spaces. Right, we're talking about our 50 spaces?
Correct, so 50 spaces up on the top, the 4th level of the structure, in the agreement, we call for, permitting those spaces from 8 PM to 8 AM. So by switching it to, and I'm presuming that the bulk of the people that we're talking about for employee parking would be daytime, to your point?
Yep.
And so during the daytime and wanting to get a better handle, like what that meant from a shift perspective from Casa Corazon. And then he left it open to further review, on the structure as a whole. We also asked, because, you know, I said, you know, if we don't have that many takers, and if we do additional advertisement with the structure, would it be possible to sell additional permits for overnight between 8 PM and 8 AM through all levels of the structure? And there's some due
Because people don't wanna go all the way up to the 4th level?
We sell permits for private lots all over the village,
Yeah.
so we're the broker and we take 50% of whatever it is.
Right.
So it's just another.
Just another avenue for overnight parking, because that seems to be a topic and a need that people, again, we're just throwing out
Duplexes,
ideas, how can we
there's a
work with
ton of
it, you know,
places.
now that we've kinda seen it. But I think the really positive thing about this group is that everyone was very practical and,
So I guess, so these spots are not our spots to do with as we see fit. We are required
We
to
do amend
amend,
the
You have to
agreement.
amend the agreement.
they have to agree to any changes we are suggesting.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes, but we agreed to,
We've got
in
the
the
spots.
contract to
Yep.
sell their property, so I don't think they should really have a problem.
and again, I just wanna relay that this was a very
Good,
cooperative
yeah.
conversation.
So far, we're.
You know, like, I just, it's the first time we've actually had, that's why I was just more focused, I'm not trying to be too overly detailed about it, but Bart and I find ourselves in situations a lot where we're like, I wonder what they were thinking when this happened. So I just wanted to be clear, because it's also like, as things change over time, it's just a really easy record for everyone to track. You know, and so that way, if conditions for some reason do change because of something else, you know, we just have a clear record. But they're very cooperative and they were very, you know, easy to reach. And,
So we'll probably just be following up with a hard request.
yeah, it's just, I think it's the start of a conversation.
Is it Roundy's who is responsible for cleaning the parking structure
Yes.
and maintaining it? It is.
Yes.
So is that who we would reach out to about making sure, I was up there relatively recently and it was like filthy, there was like garbage all over the floor on the, whatever level that is the
The third or.
yeah, whatever one
The
is.
useless level?
The one that you get on the
Keep
second
riding the
floor
elevator
of the
up and
ground. I don't know what level that is.
That's level.
So
Everyone
that
knows
one
it, yeah.
is like, I mean, there's always, I don't know, it just always looks like.
I mean, yeah, feel free to contact me, they've been responsive to
Okay.
requests in the
Yeah.
past where we've
Okay.
had them clean things up, so if you see that, feel free to give me a call, or
Okay.
email, I can forward over to
Okay.
them.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, this is maybe, I apologize, but like an interesting fact. So, because it is a little confusing for people, like which level am I on,
Yes.
which level do I go into?
Oh, yeah.
But they had said, you know, even though that access is on the 3rd floor, people will go back down and zoom to park in the 2nd floor. Like there are people who, which is different to me, like as a user, you know, I always kind of make a strategic effort to
Yeah.
always park on that floor, and they're like, no, people will like circle back around, being closer to the ground. And so we had that discussion as we talked and we walked actually the 2nd level. And now that I've been back in the structure, I feel like all I do is look at the parking structure. You
Well-
do see it happening all the time.
Well, everyone figured out to go to C, so now you can't go to C, so everyone's now figuring out to go to B.
Yeah, everyone's circling
Walk a flight of
around the 2nd level, so it's just,
Hmm.
yeah,
Interesting.
Human behavior.
yeah.
I do
Alright.
think that a follow-up too is that I found out the police, our parking enforcement, even though we sell permits, if, they never go into structures, they only monitor permits on streets. And so I really wanna, as we built 2 new structures, I mean, so it's parking, it should be part of enforcement, I just wanted to pass it on.
Yeah.
No, not at all, I had a big long conversation with them.
Alrighty. Madam Sedum, the report?
TDD report.
Sure, I can start, and if Erica has anything on a relevant topic, she can weigh in. I guess, item A, and I think, John, you're familiar with this, I met with, 2 village residents who are interested in opening supportive housing for independent adults who need assistance. They've kind of been going along for several years trying to get, you know, whether it's 6 units, 10 units, or a whole building that could, you know, house independent adults who just need some sort of supportive housing, and so they were looking at one particular apartment building, and they'd come in to talk about code issues and zoning and stuff to confirm that that would be relevant, and at the time, what they had provided to me seemed doable. I'm not sure if they have the financing and everything involved currently, so that's a possibility of them, but they also did reach out to me just to let me know if any sites or developers are interested, that they would love to partner or be involved with any sort of redevelopment that could possibly do this. They've identified a need, in their minds within the village. They said oftentimes, senior housing is discussed and things like that, but we never really talk about supportive housing. So in terms of a housing project, they've, asked me to keep my eyes open for opportunities for them, and just know that it's on the radar for something that they're looking to do in terms of, zoning and building code if any issues arise. So
What's the definition of supportive housing?
I think it's different for everyone, but it's people that might need to be checked in on, once a day to see if everything's going well, but not necessarily nursing care or anything like
So
that.
it's not like
It's
on-site
it's high
care?
functioning, people
Yeah.
with special needs, people that have jobs and
Yep.
whatnot.
But it's
and-
more of a, maybe not the right term, but like a rooming house kind of situation where they're renting rooms?
It's
and-
independent units, it's
Yeah.
independent full
But
units.
there's like a
But there are people
full-time,
there
Staff.
to
There's
help.
full-time,
Like a-
there's staff.
Instead of apartment manager, you
Yeah,
have
you
a.
can
Pull a
call them
buzzer.
to help.
Correct.
pull a buzzer and someone.
Yeah,
Okay,
someone's
so you
there.
might take a 4-unit apartment building and do this?
Yeah, you might
Correct.
take
Or an
a
8
floor,
unit.
like a floor the building that they were asking about, is the one on the Capitol in Oakland. I don't know what's going on with that building and why that came up.
For the larger.
For the larger,
Yeah, they had a smaller one, I believe, in Menlo, somewhere was just 6 units. So they're open to a bunch of opportunities. They're just
Mm-hmm.
They need an elevator?
not necessarily, I mean, it's not that they're necessarily physically disabled, they just need some level of, support. I believe the ones, the residents they were talking about this time, all had jobs within the village, if not within the village nearby, so they rely on public transportation or, ride sharing, things like that, so it's not necessarily
They talked about this
physical
at
disabilities,
the
but-
Human Relations Commission once, someone brought it up, so I
Okay.
think it'd be great to discuss again as we get closer. What about our neighborhood loan program that we froze? I mean, that's at some point when we discuss the outcome of it and if we wanna change the mission, I mean, that's something that can be considered as well, is if this is an important need in our community.
Yeah, if
The
they're physical.
order of magnitude on this is pretty large. Like, I almost think,
Right.
it's, from a financial perspective. Like, and I don't know how this would work, and you've had discussions,
Mhm.
preliminary discussions with Beth, but if somebody were to come in and like buy, a building that was office space and turn that into apartments, is that something where the village could partner up? Are there tax credits, that type of thing, where you could have like a permanent place for, high functioning individuals that kind of need a little extra care but need to be near bus lines and that's kind of what she was talking about, right?
Yeah, she's looking for, I think they've been working with DSAW, which I think is the Down Syndrome Association of Wisconsin, so I think they've had experience doing this for multiple needs of people. And so they're working with organizations who know how to do this, and oftentimes the municipality or someone is a partner of some sort. They referenced, or I think we all mutually referenced, the veterans housing on, I believe, 35th in Wisconsin, where there's like a coffee shop on the ground floor. I don't know who was involved with that development, but there are examples of this elsewhere, and so they were looking whether or not, that veterans one is a big facility, right?
Right.
So they're looking at all scales to see, the larger redevelopment sites that the Oakland and Capitol's brought up, the North Shore Bank, the one that we'll talk about here in a little bit for the RFP, that was brought up, whether or not a developer would be interested in partnering with that, because that's also on the bus line. And so I've had 2 or 3 preliminary conversations, and they kind of just keep checking in to make sure that I'm, paying attention and keeping my ears open for it. So they're very on top of what they're looking to do. So I mentioned that I'd bring it up in my, development report here, just as the housing authority, if there is a desire from the CDA or board to, partner, whether it's financially or otherwise, it's on our radar, I suppose.
And I just add, let's talk about pilots with all those groups too.
Right.
Let's
There you
sell
go.
the- Let's sell
You
the
do,
fourth
right.
floor of the parking structure at Metro Market.
We can all-
Put it up there.
Well, they all work there.
It'd be perfect. Win.
No, but I think it's an excellent intro into, we need to have that discussion on housing at some point.
It ties into that.
Just some other brief ones, the Goldies building, they did go through design review board, they're gonna change a few windows, on that building, so that is moving forward. They've applied for building permits with the state, so they're still on the schedule, they expect for late spring, early summer next year to occupy that space. The next one,
I'm
which,
gonna recuse myself for that, I don't know what you're gonna talk about on it, but I'm on the board of that bank.
oh, for C,
Yeah.
sure.
Out you go. See you later, alligator. We'll let you know.
I'll be back in a few minutes.
Sure. Just kind of an update, and President Rosick and Chair Hammond were there as well as Village Manager Ewald. So we, North Shore Bank issued an RFP for people to potentially purchase and either reoccupy or redevelop the site. They had met with us as, members of the village to determine whether there was any particular need or interest from our behalf. I was there as the zoning person, but, President Rosick and Chair Hammond also participated, just in the concept of what we'd be looking for. 4 stories is kind of, what the zoning code allows, so that's kind of where I was guiding things in mixed use, either full residential or partial commercial occupancy in the first floor. There was discussion, Erica was there as well, sorry. There was discussion of, whether it's a specialty deli or things like that, anything that we were looking for that they could probably, or that they could try to steer
They
towards us.
wanted to know if we would give them money and if we would exceed the height limit, period. I mean, that's what the meeting was about.
Sure.
So,
They definitely had
In a
those
nice
questions
way.
in mind.
yeah, it was very pleasant. I'm
Right,
just saying
yeah.
I mean,
And so my understanding is the deadline for that was the 20th. I have
Oh,
received
yeah,
no
okay.
update since then.
6, because
6.
then once you go past 6, you have to use different instruction.
So, just as, I guess a heads up, it's out there for RFP. I don't know how the first, result ended up, because I believe the first deadline did pass. And I've received no update, and then I could follow up with, Colliers to see if there is an update, whether there's been timeline or not. But I guess just a heads up that it is out there and it is,
So anecdotally, I heard from someone I know that they were sent the RFP
Yeah.
12 hours before it was due. I take that to mean they didn't have any responses. Because
Oh,
why
no,
are
they did. I know that they did.
Or maybe they didn't get enough or anything good, because
Right.
why were they shooting this out to commercial
Well, they
brokers
hired-
12 hours before the deadline?
I think they hired like a relationship manager. I mean, it's very odd that you.
Yeah, it just, the whole thing seemed a little
So-
weird. I do have a question for you guys, and is the village, do we in general like to see more retail spots, knowing retail is challenging? Like, are we?
Well, if I knew what the market was and if we had an oversupply or not, that would be a great question. But
Well,
yes.
that's my question is, is that, does the village have a position or not really on
Not till we know the market.
a deal like this, being all residential or requiring commercial space that might sit empty because
So
it's
our
not really-
code currently does not require that it be commercial space on the first floor. And I agree with you, my personal gut feeling is we need better commercial space, as the CDA has always said, like our layouts aren't the greatest. So,
in
but
the
we-
older buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so maybe the older buildings go to like, there might be a switch, but again, we really need a market study to tell us. We've put like 200 units of residential on the market in the last 4 years, and we need to know how much more demand do we have? We don't wanna be stealing from other landlords just to steal. We want to make sure we have a demand. Same thing for commercial. With the change of the markets, what we encountered for instance, in the Park East and downtown is the first floor we wanted to be activated, so we did a form-based code because we knew we'd be oversaturated. There wouldn't be enough commercial to fill all that space, new space. So we allowed, our code, we changed our code and made sure that it just needed to be activated. So if it was a apartment building, it needed to be the gym or something, or the office. So there's ways to do that, but until you have a gauge on what the market is, it's really hard to make those changes to your code.
Mhm.
So I think at this point, because the code doesn't require it, it's really up for grabs. Whatever usually developers will know, you'd hope
Yeah,
they would
decide
know
what
their
kind of
market
side.
study.
Yeah.
We just don't necessarily have a stance because at this moment.
I know that when I worked on the third ward, they insisted on first floor retail, I think that's on Erie, that one that goes all the way down to the end.
Yeah,
And those things sat vacant forever.
right,
And they still are, so,
right,
but they insisted upon it, and there was no demand, so.
exactly.
Yeah. And I think Erica made the point at the meeting, there is demand for retail space, but just not at that price point within a new development.
Correct.
Yeah.
So that's part of the struggle as well.
I support it for multifamily,
Right.
because I think there's still a demand for new units, just as a resident, apartment renter now, myself, and just keeping an eye out on the pulse, like what other units are available for future. Yeah, there's, I'm not moving to an older unit.
Okay, yep.
John, I think you're good
Is
to
he there?
then.
Good.
But I would highly advise if we wanted to
Chairman's
have a
looking sharp.
discussion on the agenda about getting a market study, that'd be great.
Suit, man, and the tie. Dang, I gotta step my.
That would be
CDA
okay.
game
Up a little bit.
Just a monkey suit. All right.
I kind of
What else
referenced,
you got?
I kind of referenced D already. Ascension was at Design Review Board last night, it was held for modifications primarily to the storefront windows. So we're looking at options for that. Just events and updates. I did attend the fair housing training that I mentioned at the meeting before. It was very informative. There wasn't a large group there. I think it was, 6 or 8. But at least from my perspective, it was a good refresher on fair housing. I attended the zoning board of appeals and adjustments with the chair of board of appeals. Topic discussed include legal requirements for variances, just in terms of development, things. I thought it's a good update that Committee and I attended. The Citizens Academy is coming up in 2019. Assistant Manager Burkhart has asked, and I think I did send it out, or maybe I didn't send it out to the CDA, I think I did Plan Commission, but committee members are recommended to consider attending or promoting the program to interested citizens. So if anyone's looking for a refresher on everything the village, does and offers, feel free to share that around.
Are we taping it this year too?
It was taped last year. I don't know if we're taping again. Power Cycle, we discussed this last time. I had the wrong dates. They should be open. There was a grand celebration opening on December 1st. I didn't attend it, or nobody else had an opportunity to do so. Either went or not. Grants and loans, the village board did suspend the neighborhood loan program, so we won't be seeing any new applications at this time. I'm looking at doing that in the spring to revise it, so my timeline includes that I'll bring it back to the CDA for discussion in terms of whether or not housing, needs, or no one identified that can be complemented within that program. But I just don't have the time to do it currently, so we're looking at doing that in the spring once the transportation stuff gets more routine.
I would highly recommend doing a market study before we decide what we wanna do with the funding. I just don't know how else we're gonna gauge that besides opinions.
And that could be a discussion for the group at that time.
I think we should add that to our work plan for.
Definitely try to find an example of something that would be
2019.
That's
useful
what I
for
was,
us.
yeah, I'd like to see some examples.
I know that we've mentioned that several times, and so it's in the back of my head to try to find examples.
Good,
We've
okay.
asked other people to give us examples that they've utilized as well, so. And then lastly, Power Cycle, they received a design and sign grant for their sign. So that's kind of what I had. Anything to supplement with that?
Yeah, they haven't submitted their final reimbursement information for our cycle. I finally gave, final reimbursement paperwork for Stone Creek, and Bart and I can both attest that that was a bit questionable with some of their items, cause a lot of it was, they didn't have a general contractor. They just had someone on staff kind of ordering parts here, there, everywhere, and not differentiating, so going
Took some
forward,
time.
if that, we're gonna, next time something like that happens where some of it's in-house, we'll look at it better, but we do need to relook at some of the language in the program to help clarify. Boo's Egg, I've not received any reimbursement documents, but they said they're ready to submit them to me. I am meeting with the person who's going into the Hyatt's position next Friday, for the cafe pastry shop, for loan, actually. So I'm looking at the loan. No updates on the other half of that space in Hyatt's.
So they're taking half, I'm sorry, I missed that.
Mhm.
They're just taking half.
There, yeah.
It's a cafe.
Yeah.
Just
and
the bottom
cake
half or something?
and pastry shop. So there hasn't been a press release, so I guess I'm still not sharing. I don't know if people have been aware, but there is a retailer that really wants to be here and be primarily in the corner Oakland and Capitol location. That's 3,500 square feet.
You're
I
talking about-
wrote a letter on behalf of that business to Dan Katz. Just one page saying, this is the situation. And I basically, and I just mailed it Monday morning. So if I don't hear from, if that doesn't work out or it goes south, the bid will, and they agreed on the last meeting to write a letter to the CDA and the village prompting you to start looking at the vacant registration program again. So we'll see.
I agree, he's a
There-
notoriously bad
there-
landlord.
Yes, so there is a second location this retailer is looking at, and I just had a conversation yesterday with that broker, which I think would also be a great location.
When you say
So
retailer,
I'm hopeful that of those two, that we can get a retailer here.
are you talking about retailer like store retailer, or are you talking about retailer like hotel retailer?
No, like product. It's
I-
a good fit. Let me see, so there's
Do
that.
tell. Hey, you're on.
So, yeah, I can certainly forward everyone a copy of the letter, but if I were to send you a letter asking you to revisit
How did we do
programs,
that
I was gonna give you
before?
a copy of it anyway.
I haven't been here that long, but what was the most effective way, not that we've been very effective with cats, but is it usually the bid just goes and asks them, is it the bid and the village go together? I mean, I just don't have the background.
Most effective way for what? To fill vacancies?
No, like to get cats to move on the dime, or like, we haven't been successful at no, but I'm just saying, is there a strategy other than just writing the letter?
No, the letter's gonna come to us to engage in the
No.
vacancy fee.
But she
Just
wrote,
punitive measures.
Yes.
you wrote
On
cat's
the
letter, right?
bid.
The retroactive
Yeah.
vacancies fee.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about the letter to the landlord?
Yeah.
Just laying out the idea.
Yeah,
I know we talk a lot, but to my knowledge, the bid has never written a formal letter, so that's just step one on the bid's behalf.
excellent, that's great, I'm just wondering if there's more that you want the village to do, if there's been any success in the past, please pass it along, because again,
Right.
No, that
I've
would
only
be
been here 3
incentive,
years.
so.
I mean, yeah, or do we, you know, write our own letter?
James Justiger did ask again, about previous administration, vocalizing that they would be willing to participate in fitting it back into the building. I said, "Cool." Yeah, so I don't recall those conversations, so.
I do, but, they never acted on it.
From how many years ago, right, so it's not gonna happen.
Okay.
Oh, I did call Harleen, she owns that 4433, building with Forever Young. It is fully occupied, it's still on the market. I do have a business, owner that I know is looking for a building, so, I'm gonna touch base with him, 'cause I gave him some leads, see where he's at.
Why
It's
were
a
you
fabulous
talking to
spot.
them?
Why was I talking to him?
Just because they're
It's
trying to
original
sell it.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to make sure what has changed. Did you have anyone sign 10-year leases? I like to touch base with the office building owners to see where the vacancies are at too, so.
They own the house next door too, correct?
No.
Not to my knowledge.
Oh, I thought they did, I thought the property owner owned both. Okay.
No, so I was calling first to see if it's still for sale for this one person.
Do you know how much they were asking?
I don't recall.
That was 500.
Really?
So that's really it on my end. Yeah.
I have one other thing, as an update, so, I've been approached now twice, and I know Bart, you've had phone calls about food trucks. I know that's something that's Plan Commission's bailiwick, but because they're not permanent, you know, CDA wouldn't, but if you're business people, so, I just,
So we want more food trucks or what?
we don't allow them.
We don't have any.
So I thought we did, we looked into
What's
the
in front
code,
of draft investor letter Friday?
Cart.
an illegal.
It's not,
Okay. Yeah, I love it.
That
Good
did,
stuff.
it's a cart, not a truck.
yes, that did come up though. This
Isn't that
fall.
seasonal too?
Sorry, anyway, so the question is.
Anyways,
just-
so the question is, in the past, I just remember being on the bid that the bricks and mortar stores, restaurants objected because we don't have that big of a consumer crowd, for lunch, and so that would steal from their customers and they're paying the rent, and so anyways, so we're gonna be
Mostly that was-
faced,
What can I say, who it was?
Three Lions was one of them, but I don't know if there were more.
Oh, I thought it was Culver's.
It could be, there's a lot of them, yeah, Culver's,
You would think they'd all have
I
the same
don't think Culver's.
question.
No.
Oh, no, he called me, yes.
They don't.
So anyways, it's a big, it's in there, it's out and about right now, people are asking about it. And so I know, Bart, you're supposed to talk to me and find out if we wanna bring it to planning commission, so that's why I'm just bringing it up, is that if we have a strong opinion, that'd be great. The other thing I just wanted to share was, I did talk with the Blues Egg manager at Ghost Train, and just market related, he indicated that he was surprised, the only thing that's changed or surprised him was we don't have a very strong breakfast crowd during the week, like his other shop. And I said to him, yes, and that's the market study, that would be helpful, but yes, our strongest time, what we've heard feedback is happy hour time is really where most of the restaurants make a lot of business, but they're closed, so, I'm just sharing because that was something he observed.
Would they
It doesn't
consider-
surprise me at all.
Yeah, would they consider changing
I
their-
asked him, I said, what, I really want you to succeed, and I,
Kids.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
because they close at 2.
They are,
CDA meetings.
segmenting that back area off for people who wanna have meetings, so we took advantage of that for one of our committee meetings recently.
Okay. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Next one's up, we got.
That's not, no, not bad.